This is the gospel according to the IRS, Breaking Points and Church Financial Updates. And now, here's the authority, Dr. Michael Chitwood and Breaking Points.
I'm Michael Chitwood. Welcome to Breaking Points. I've got a breaking news story for you right now. Did you know that a church just got in trouble because they did not have their corporate church minute book up to date? Do you know that you're required to keep your church corporate minute book up to date? Now, I'm not talking about the next board approval for your chili supper or chicken dinner or moving the piano from the second floor to the third floor. I'm not talking about those things going in the minute book. That's church history. You can keep that in there all you want to, but I'm talking about the official documents that's required to be in your church minute book. If you don't have your church minute book up to date, then you're going to be in serious trouble. Grab a pad and pen. I'd like to get started with some points right now that you need to know about. Put at the top of your page, Church Corporate Minute Book. Church Corporate Minute Book. And number one, I want you to put in there, the number one and most important thing is the annual election of the officers and directors. You understand today, ladies and gentlemen, that it's impossible for someone to be elected for life. You have an annual election every year of the president, the treasurer, the secretary, the vice president, and the board of directors. Now, you can have a board of advisors, and they can be elected also by the trustee board or by the board, the official board. But the board of directors is an election that's going to be held every year. Normally, it's held at the end of each year or at the beginning of a new year. That can be the official kind of date that you kind of put into your mind. There's no date set unless it's in your bylaws, and the bylaws would tell you the date to have that. And normally it's right at the end of a year or at the beginning of another year. And remember, that corporate annual election can have all new business in it too. After you finish the annual corporate election, re-electing or electing new people or re-electing the old people that was on the board from the prior year, then you can also have some new business in there. Maybe new business to build a building, new business to do this, maybe new business for that. All those things can go in that annual election. In other words, the point number one is not just limited to the election of the officers and directors. It's limited to anything that you want to put in there that you feel like should be in the minute book. I can tell you this, always put more in the minute book than less. And of course, you want to be careful with what things you put in there because the Internal Revenue Service has the right to read your corporate minute book. So you want to make it read good and make it read truthful, of course. Number two is you must have in there your housing allowance request and your housing allowance approval forms. Some people do this. They say, well, just make it the same as last year. Doesn't that seem kind of ridiculous to you? Because housing goes up every year. Real estate taxes go up, utilities go up, everything goes up. Have you ever heard of anything going down or staying the same? Nothing stays the same and nothing goes down for most cases. I want you to make sure that you have your request for housing allowance attached to the housing allowance minutes. And remember, in a previous segment, what we did for you is we gave you all of the housing allowance items that go into housing allowance, and even by the response, we found out that most pastors have missed that, and most pastors aren't even taking a housing allowance under Section 107 of the Internal Revenue Code. Now, don't get that mixed up with Section 170. They're two different things. The code section for housing is Section 107 of the Internal Revenue Code. We're going to bounce that off of the 1402C, but it's basically 107, and it qualifies you to receive a housing allowance if you're performing all up to 9 sacerdotal duties. So it's important for you to make sure that with this process that you have the number two thing in your minute book. Number three, reimbursement policy. We did that in a segment just a few days ago. So a reimbursement policy must be in the minute book. And the fourth thing, what about scholarship fellowship under Section 117 and 119, little d, David, of the Internal Revenue Code? You must make sure that you have that in there if you're going to qualify for that. The fifth thing, what about a medical reimbursement policy? A medical reimbursement policy. If you have one, you can't discriminate for employees, but it needs to be in the minute book. So all of these things are part and make up the church corporate minute book, and I want that corporate seal because if nothing else, it looks good. And I think you're going to find out that the church history needs to be in a church history book, not the corporate minute book. The things that go in the corporate minute book are the things that I've just levied out for you today and mentioned for you today. It's important for you to get your books in order when it deals with the legal side. So when you talk about a church, you've got two components. You've got the financial side, and then you have the legal side. Today we're talking about the legal side. Don't let happen to you what happened to this church and cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars simply because they didn't have their church corporate minute book up to date. It's your job to make sure that your church corporate minute book is up to date. Do it, and do it now. Until next time, this is Michael Chitwood, and I will see you tomorrow.
Breaking Points gives you the latest IRS updates and tax law. Pastor, if the IRS came to your church today, what would you say? If you really want your house of worship in order, call 1-800-345-9117.